So what can we use to help us evaluate properties and have confidence? Yes, sir. Bingo, the data. All right. So it's time that you feel good about the data and have it with confidence. I'm going to show you an easy way to evaluate any property that it's so easy a caveman can do it. I like that they're bringing that back with the Geico commercials. Okay, so let's do it. Now I'm going to attack something, and bear with me with this. Okay, let's talk about this. How many people have heard this? Wasn't there a workshop on this? Okay, there was. This, now, keyword can. This doesn't work for every market. It works for very, very large popular markets. The reason why this fails is because it has you look at your property first and then evaluate the competition. And that's backwards. We need to understand what drives revenue in the marketplace first before we even look through the property that we're trying to evaluate. That's different, right? I just maybe spun your guys' head a little bit there. Let me prove to you why this is the right way in a second. I'm going to dive into this in detail. But the problem with looking at a property and then evaluating your competition solely based off that property is competition, number one, is not on a neighborhood level. Meaning that when you go into a guest goes into Airbnb and they type in your market, they see the entire market, not specifically your neighborhood. So if you're only comparing yourself to properties near you, that's not enough data. You need to compare your market. Secondly, in most markets, all properties are not the same. This method was created in a very large market where there are neighborhoods of properties that are exactly the same. And there's only a few variables that are different, like they have views or they don't. But it isn't that black and white. And that's where the lack of confidence and the fear in the numbers comes from, because when we look at our properties in our random markets, wherever they are, it isn't black and white. We have some unique thing about the property we're interested in, and we're like, okay, well, will this make me more money or not? Does that make sense? Okay, I got you guys thinking here. That's good. Now, properties, another issue too with this method is it takes an average. It's supposed to take an average. Properties are never the average. We don't want to look at the average. We want to look at what the data says we should fall under. And an average, you're never going to hit an average. You'll either be above it or below it. So what we need to look at is a range rather than a set number, okay? And then finally, when you evaluate a property, based on this method and other methods too, without understanding the market, you don't know what drives revenue in this market, okay? I want to skip to some slides before I get in trouble. So there's pros and cons to this. So those methods do look at location as, meaning like you look at a property and then you look at surrounding properties in that neighborhood and you go, this is what this property can make. That can be effective in very large markets, and that is an advantage. However, it makes a lot of assumptions that all properties and hosts in that neighborhood are very similar, meaning they suck or they don't. And you can see it and determine that. But the reality is that's not the case. It's very subjective, okay? It assumes, so very accurate when properties are all the same. It's easy to understand and do. It's pretty fast. It's really easy to do those methods. But the problem is it assumes adequate comps in the market, and we know all properties aren't the same, and it assumes you know the revenue drivers in that market. Meaning if I'm in the Smokies, for example, I need to have views. But if I'm in Asheville, North Carolina, do I need to have views in Asheville, North Carolina? Well, it's in the mountains, Kenny. But is that true about them? Do you know if that's true about that market? If you don't know the answer to that, and you're looking and evaluating properties in Asheville, North Carolina, you're gonna have a hard time knowing what true revenue is gonna be. You're gonna have lack of confidence because you don't know what the revenue drivers are for that market. You don't know if views are important or not. And you're gonna make assumptions, and you're gonna say, I assume this will do well. When in reality, you don't know. So what's my new method that I've been hyping up? It's called the CAT scan method. Competitor analysis tiers, and then scan, because you're going to scan the market. Okay, so number one, you identify competitors. So what does Kenny define as a competitor? Because it's not the same as what you're going to define as a competitor. Competitors are based off of 5 things: the market location, the quality of properties, the design and decor, the amenities, and bedroom count. So bedroom count is very, very general. So when I identify competitors, let me back up here. When somebody sends me a listing, let's say I'm on a realtor's thing, and I get a listing, an email, and they send me a listing. I'm like, oh, cool. Let me click on this. I don't look at the pictures yet. All I look at is bedroom count and where it is in the market. The first 2 things. I then set the listing aside and I go to that market. If I know the market, I can evaluate. If I don't know the market, I need to evaluate. And I need to evaluate that property based on the market based on these 4 things, meaning what drives revenue in the market. I analyze these 4 things: location, quality of the property, meaning the interior, exterior quality of the property, design and decor, and amenities. There are 4, every market is different. And the answer to the Asheville question, no, views aren't necessary to make money in Asheville, but they are in the Smokies, which is interesting. And quality of property. In the Smokies, I talked about this. You have to have a wood-sided cabin. You can't have a vinyl-sided cabin in the Smokies. But in Western North Carolina, it doesn't matter. You don't know that if you're not studying the market and looking at the properties and the revenue there, okay? I'm not even looking at the property for sale yet. I'm studying the market and understanding what drives revenue first. Now that you do this, what you're going to find is something called tiers of revenue. So what is a tier of revenue? And I don't like this screenshot, so I'm going to show you a blurrier one. So a tier of revenue is all properties. I'm looking at all properties in the market, and I see clusters of properties, not in the same location, but the same bedroom count, all across the market, generating a rough range around the same amount. So for example, I pulled up, I think this is I've been talking about Asheville, good. Okay, so 4 bedrooms in Asheville, North Carolina. You've got 4 bedrooms here doing 88,000, and you have 4 bedrooms on the high end doing 136. So we need to figure out why these are doing 88,000, the ones that are doing 88, and the ones that are doing 136, why they're doing 136 before we evaluate the property. So what I mean by that is I literally go and I look at a lot of properties and I find tiers, I find ranges of revenue. So what I can find here is I see properties do between maybe 75 and 90,000, and then it will go up in the data. I will see a literally jump in the data from 85 to, or what did I say, 75 to 90,000 to 110 to 140 even. I know it's a little bit wide range, but you'll see that. And you'll go, well, properties that are in that range. So I got to go, why are these properties making more than those properties? Does that make sense? You guys following? Okay. So, and I call these tiers. So there's tier 1. Think of it a beach market. Properties on the beach are tier 1. Properties off the beach, tier 2. Right? Like you make less money if you're off the beach, supposedly, than properties on the beach. Okay? Now, in all the markets we look at, they're not black and white like that. There's other factors involved. It's not just location. It could be quality. It could be the size of the property, design and decor, or amenities. But you got to identify what those things are. So if I look at this market here in Asheville, and I go, man, those properties between 110 and 136,000, I notice we're looking for trends and patterns. So I notice they might have views, but I notice they're all really, really big. Maybe they're over 3,000 square feet. Obviously you can't see that in the listing, but you can tell they're big houses. They might have really big views or no views at all. It's a mixed bag, but they're big houses with big decks. They have really nice fire pits. They have game rooms and a theater room. Then you look at the next grouping that's down. You notice they're a little bit smaller. They may have views, they may not, but they're smaller. They don't have decks. They might have a hot tub, no fire pit, none of that. So what was the difference between the 2 tiers, the 2 sets? The size and the amenities, exactly. Yes.
Are you able to see that in STR Insights?
So you're going to have to go listing to listing. You got to explain it, guys. You got to explain it. It's got to be that simple where you look at it and go, it's size and amenities. Now that you know that, now you can pull up your listing that's for sale. Now you look at this listing and go, ask number one, what tier, based on the pictures, based on the listing description, the location, and what I just studied about this market, what tier does this property fall under? Is it going to be the 75 to 90 or the 110 to 136 range? You're going to ask that question. And if you go, well, it's kind of small. It's got great views, but we know views doesn't matter because there's properties without views making 136. So it's about the size and the amenities, right? That's what we discovered together. So if that's the case, we go, well, this property is kind of small. What tier is it going to fall under? 2, right? That seems pretty black and white to me, right? 2. Now, the next question you ask is, if it's in tier 2, is it possible to make it into a tier 1 property? So if it's a small house and it's got views and you can add amenities, right? If the thing that drives revenue in that market is amenities, you can add amenities and you can use that for your revenue comps, like in the Poconos. But here, the size of the property. So how do we improve the size of the property? You got to build onto it, right? And that can be really expensive. So all of a sudden it's like, well, that doesn't really make any sense. And at that purchase price, they're all priced the same relatively. It's not a good deal. You see how like simple that is? Does that feel simple? Maybe not. I don't know.
So it totally does, but do you find that you get this kind of a spread and you can't find what the differentiator, or is it always pretty clear?
It's always clear. But guys, I want to emphasize that because she asked, do you find that there's pretty big spreads? So here's the thing. You have to be able to, one, identify properties that are underperforming. Because you will see some big houses, you know, and they've got amazing views, but they're making $75,000. And you're like, this doesn't fit. You know, when you have that feeling like this doesn't fit, you're probably right. It doesn't fit. Your body, your mind is naturally looking and capturing these trends when you look at multiple data points. We never want to run our comps based off of one property or 2 properties or 3 properties. We want to look at the market. It's not how many, it's about what the market dictates there are. Now, you don't need to look at all, like, I don't know how many are in this cluster or whatever, but you need to study this. Now, as to your insights, you can use percentiles and break them down and go, okay, I can kind of see ranges. Now, I don't care about the actual percentiles. To answer your guys' question earlier, I don't, because they will vary. Like 90% here could be different than like Waynesville, which is much smaller. You know, I'll be using the 80th percentile. So it's important that we're looking at these ranges, and you will see in the data multiple data points. They will be together, and they will have similar attributes, and they will be within a range. And then there'll be a little bit jump up, and that'll be the tier up from them. And normally I see 3 to 4 tiers in every market. Tiers 4 and 3 are underperforming and sucky properties, and you'll see that right away. It's the difference between tier 1 and 2 that you need to identify. If you're able to do that, you're able to know and feel confident in your numbers because it's black and white. You made it that simple. And then when you run your revenue, you'll be able to tell, like you'll run a range of the tiers, right? You'll go, look, I think this property can make between $75,000 and $90,000. Let me put that in my pro forma, $75,000 to $90,000. Does that pencil out? If it does, then yeah, you potentially have a deal. But if it doesn't, then you know. So now we're not just looking at a set number, looking at the tiers and a range, and that's helping minimize our risk in the evaluation process. Okay? I strongly encourage you guys. I'm gonna skip to the end here. Pros and cons of it. So I'm competing with Stacy's mom right now. So apparently she's got it going on. So you know. So guys, look. Besides this, we'll get to that at the end. You need to go to my YouTube channel at STR Insights, and I dive into this deeper. If you master this concept of using tiers and understanding the market first before you look at the property, it's so much easier to know if that property is a good deal or not. Okay? I'm glad it makes sense for some of you. Good. If you have questions about this, please come see me. I am very passionate on this subject, so I will lay it all out for you. As always, guys, we actually help people find deals, and we teach you how to find deals too using the steps I just taught you, but for you personally. So please come up and talk to us about how we can help you find deals. But guys, that's a wrap for me. It was fun. Thank you.